Let me start with a question. So, how many of you have been to a garden center in maybe the past year? If you have, raise your hand. Okay, well, that's quite good. That's actually more than I expected. So, you probably all know what a garden center looks like from the inside, right? You've ever been to one, maybe. So, what I always like about the garden center is that there are so many different plants and there are so many different colors and flowers and foliage. It is such an amazing variety, just this incredible range of variation. And I always think that no matter what your taste is or what kind of colors you like, there is always a plant that you will like somewhere in that garden center. But have you ever thought about how those plants got there? Because there is a big story behind each and every one of those plants that is there, which is a story of scientists, greenhouse growers, of breeders, and also of data scientists, and of breeding technicians and lab workers who have all made this possible by working on this project very hard over quite a number of years. So I am a breeder of pot and bedding plants, and I will tell you that story today. So as a breeder, it is my job to create varieties that solve the problems of today and of the future. And breeding takes a long time. You probably already know this. But if you breed a variety from scratch in 5 years, you've been really fast. So if I start something, I really need to think very well about what I am going to do. Because if we miss a trend or a movement in the commercial area, then we can really be much too late if we have to start that up later. So we have two main customers, and their problems and wishes are a large part of what we work on. So we have the consumer and the grower. So let's start with the grower, because they grow the plants that will end up in your Intratuin or in your Albert Heijn or anywhere else for sale. So imagine you are a grower. Your daily work environment probably looks a little bit like this. You see a high-tech greenhouse, a lot of plants. You probably have multiple hectares and millions of plants to raise and take care of. You are really busy and you have a tight schedule. So your plants need to be ready to sell right on time. They also shouldn't be too difficult to grow because you have so many to take care of. You can't pamper every individual one. And you also really want them to be a little bit resilient, be resistant to pests and diseases, because you can't sell a plant that is half eaten by bugs or that is full of mold. And lastly, you want it to look great in the store. So you need a variety that will look nice even after transport in the truck and then standing under the TL light of the Albert Heijn for a week. Also some nice bright colors and interesting shapes. That also really helps catch the eye of the consumer, which is in many cases us. It's you, it's me. So what do you look for when you go buy a plant? You want it to be pretty. You want to choose from a lot of colors maybe, a lot of different styles. But you also want it to last long. When you put it in your garden or in your terrace or in your house, you really want it to look beautiful for weeks. And also, if for example, you forget to water it for a week or it rains, which happens quite often, of course, in the Netherlands, then it should still look a little bit nice afterwards, right? You don't want to throw it in the trash. So, and lastly, it should be easy to take care of. So if you have been paying attention, that's already becoming quite a long list of things that a variety has to be able to do. And as a breeder, I make that list together with my colleagues from perhaps marketing and sales, who can give me real insights in what is happening in the commercial market. And then we start to think, what does this variety need to do? We also look a little bit further ahead to the future. For example, resistance is not only important for the grower, but also to make plants more eco-friendly, right? To make them more sustainable. So that is something we take into account. We also know that climate change is happening and it is making weather more extreme. So we need plants that can handle extreme and changing weather better than before. So once we have this list of things that it needs to do, I might start dreaming a little, like, oh, if it could do everything, the perfect plant, what would that look like? But then I really need to snap right out of it, because the perfect plant doesn't exist and we have some work to do. So first I identify the most difficult traits, and then to get those traits into the plant and get a plan on how to do it, I will consult with my colleagues who are scientists in perhaps phytopathology, that is plant disease experts, but maybe post-harvest technologies or molecular biology or anything else. Really depends on the traits that we are looking for. So once we have identified how we are going to, what our plan is, it usually starts with testing, with screening, with testing a lot of plants. So, for example, these seedlings here are all going to be tested for a certain trait. Once we have identified the plants that have the traits that we want, I, as a breeder actually, will make crosses with those plants to make the optimal combinations. Then those crosses will be made for me by a breeding technician in the greenhouse. And then with the seeds and the plants that come from those crosses, we will do a large number of trials in different locations. And that is something we do to make sure that our variety will really perform well in a range of different climates and conditions. We will do them outside in the field, in the summer like you see here, but for example also in early spring in the greenhouse. But these trials would not be possible without a professional grower to take care of these plants and actually grow these trials for us and make sure they're good quality, so that we, the breeders, can gather good data. And we gather a lot of data over the years, over these trials. And this data is going to tell us which plant is the best, which plant has it all, has the potential to become a commercial variety. Okay, so we have a variety, right? We are ready to sell it, and so now we need to scale it up. Because right now we might have hundreds of plants, but to sell it worldwide, we need millions of plants. So then we really have to work closely with our colleagues from the greenhouse, from supply chain, from planning, tissue culture experts in the lab, but also pollinators and greenhouse growers in the greenhouse to make the seeds or the cuttings. So, as you have gathered already probably, to make a variety, an idea for a variety, a reality, a real product that is on the market, is not something I do by myself. The breeder is central to this process, but I work with so many of my colleagues to make it possible, and it is really this whole network that you need to make that happen. So, yeah, it's really great. I like to work with so many colleagues from different expertises and really make the best product together. So that's all pretty general. So I will give you an example. So in this picture, you see a plant, and maybe you recognize it. Any of you recognize it? Well, anyways, it is a pretty popular garden plant worldwide, and it is het vlijtige liesje in Dutch, or busy lizzie in English. But I will call it Impatiens, because the scientific name is Impatiens valeriana. So this is a really popular plant because it blooms really nicely. It has so many different colors and patterns, and it will really last long when you put it in the garden, all the way from early summer to deep into fall. And it also does well in the shade, so that is why it's very popular. However, a decade ago, there was a problem. So there was a disease that was showing up all around the world that was affecting these plants. And what the disease would do is it would make the plants drop the leaves, drop the flowers, and then you would have these bare stems left, and even those bare stems would then become a slimy mess and fall apart. So not good. And it would happen in gardens, but also at the growers, and really early in the plant's life. So this disease was making it impossible to grow impatiens in many parts of the world. It was really a plant pandemic, or impatiens pandemic. So what are we going to do about this problem? Because the fungus that causes this problem, this disease, it makes spores that can last in the soil for many, many years. So it wasn't going to be solved by just not growing it for a while. And we could spray fungicides, but that, of course, would be really harmful for the environment, potentially. But it's also not feasible, because it would need constant reapplication by both the grower and the person in the garden. You don't want to spray chemicals on your plant every day, right? And for the grower, it's really expensive to purchase these products and spray millions of plants. So that was not an option. The solution really needed to come from breeding. We need to breed a resistant impatiens plant that does all the things that we know and love about the impatiens, but also has that resistance to this disease. And that is exactly what some of my close colleagues set out to do several years ago. So the impatiens breeder and the phytopathologist came together and made a plan. We need to do something about this, and we need to do it fast. So they started by screening thousands of plants to look for the ones that have a resistance to this disease. And soon enough, after some experiments, they found some, quite a lot actually. But there was a problem. These plants were really ugly. And some of them were also really hard to grow. So how are you going to make this into that? So that is the difficult part of breeding. And there are many techniques to speed it up, but this is really at the heart of breeding. It is crossing that trait back into the normal impatiens. So this takes many cycles and many years. But after a few years, my colleagues, they succeeded. They did it. They had made it. Here you see the dramatic picture of the difference between the white one is the resistant variety that we made, and on the right there is the, well, obviously the susceptible. That looks terrible, right? So the team, the impatiens breeder, everybody was really proud of it. They thought, yes, we did it. So now they really wanted to put it on the market fast. And for that, they really worked together with the supply chain, with the tissue culture lab, and with pollinators and seed cleaning facilities to really make sure that this variety could go to the market. And of course also with marketing, to plan the introduction and to maybe make some commercials for it. And then in 2018, it was a success. They did it. And what is even more special, they were the first to launch impatiens that is resistant against this disease. However, the competition in plant breeding is really strong. It is always a race to be ahead of each other, because everybody knew about this problem. So the competitor also knew it, and they were also working on the same product. So it is always a race of being ahead, of being the most innovative, of being the fastest, being the best. And well, that shows that as a breeder, I can never fully relax. I can never think, oh, this is done. I don't have to do anything about it anymore. I always have to think about the future. What is next? How can I improve this plant, this product? So right now, the industry is at a really interesting moment in its timeline. There are techniques that have been quite common in vegetable breeding already that are slowly also becoming available for ornamentals, for flowers. And those techniques will make a lot of new things possible that really were not possible before. This is almost a technological revolution. Well, you could call it that. So we are laying the foundation right now for this technological revolution, and it is really going to change the way we breed plants in the next 10 years. So it's also, if you do anything in breeding, in phytopathology, molecular biology, maybe molecular sciences, chemistry, data science, programming, automation, you name it, there is a part that you can play in revolutionizing flowers breeding. Worldwide, we humans, we grow around 200 food crops to eat commercially. That's 200 different species. And for flowers, I tried to look for a number, but I couldn't find it. But I am very sure that it is at least 10 times that number. That is something I really like about ornamental breeding, about flower breeding. The variety, the number of different species and challenges and specific things, and the number of different beautiful flowers and plants is so amazing. It really inspires me. And just like there is a plant for everyone in the garden center, there is also a challenge for everyone in flowers breeding. So if you are up for this challenge and you want to work on it, on cutting-edge technologies with a big group of dedicated colleagues, you are very welcome to join the sector in the future. Thank you.